Yemi stared at the old, rusted gate of his family compound. It looked exactly the same, yet so different. He had once called this place home, but now it just felt foreign. He hesitated before stepping inside. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows on the ground. His heart was heavy. He was returning with nothing but a suitcase filled with memories. His brothers had thrown him out years ago. Back then, they had argued over his share of the family land, accusing him of being a lazy dreamer who didn't deserve anything. Now, Yemi was back, but not for the reasons they might think. As he walked towards the main building, he heard loud voices. His brothers, Taiwo and Kehinde, were arguing as usual. Yemi stopped and listened from the side of the house. "Ah, Kehinde, have you finished the money you got from selling the land?" Taiwo's voice was sharp. "Don't talk as if you didn't get a share," Kehinde replied, his tone irritated. "You know everything was for all of us," Taiwo said defensively. Yemi couldn't believe his ears. So, they had sold the land, he thought. His land. His blood boiled. Just then, Amara, their neighbor, stepped out of her house and caught sight of Yemi. "Yemi, is that really you?" she called out, her voice filled with surprise. He put on a brave face. "Ah, Amara, yes, I'm back," he replied, forcing a smile. She looked at him knowingly. "Your brothers didn't tell me you were visiting. Do they know you're back?" He shook his head. "No, let's keep it a surprise for now." Amara nodded knowingly. "It's good to see you. I remember when you left, things were difficult." "Difficult is an understatement," Yemi muttered under his breath. "But I'm here for a reason." Amara patted his arm gently. "If you need a place to rest, my door is always open." Yemi nodded, grateful. "Thank you. I won't forget this." Inside, Taiwo and Kehinde's argument grew louder. Yemi entered the room quietly, but his presence drew immediate attention. Kehinde's voice trailed off mid-sentence as they both turned to face him. "Yemi?" Taiwo started, clearly shocked. "What are you doing here?" Yemi looked them square in the eyes. "I came to see my land," he said calmly. The room fell silent. Taiwo shifted awkwardly. Kehinde finally spoke, attempting to laugh it off. "Ah, you're talking about the old land. You didn't really want it, did you?" Yemi's expression didn't change. "You didn't even ask me, did you?" They had nothing to say. Their silence was all the answer Yemi needed. Yemi turned on his heel and left the room, feeling their eyes bore into his back. He went outside to where he could breathe. The place felt smaller than he remembered, poverty-stricken, a stark contrast to the grandeur he had dreamed of when he left. Amara approached him, carrying a small, wrapped parcel. "I thought you might be hungry," she said softly. "Thank you," Yemi replied, taking the parcel gratefully. Inside was a simple meal, but it tasted like kindness. As he sat in the small backyard, he heard his father's familiar voice calling him from inside. "Yemi, come here!" He took a deep breath, stood up, and wiped his hands. He walked inside to face the man whose approval had always seemed just out of reach. His father looked older, but just as stern. "Why did you come back without a word?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "I came to see what's left of my share," Yemi replied, standing tall. "And maybe to see who's left of my family that I might claim." His father flinched, unprepared for such direct words. "You know your brothers have always looked out for you," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Have they?" Yemi challenged. "Because from where I stand it seems they looked out for themselves." The old man sighed deeply. "Things have changed, Yemi. Times are hard." "Tell me something new," Yemi replied, unable to hide the bitterness in his voice. "Some things don't change, it seems." His father looked down, his words hanging heavy in the air. Yemi knew he wouldn't get the comfort he had secretly longed for. As night fell, Yemi decided it was time to rest his head. He made his way back to Amara's house. She welcomed him with open arms, her warmth melting some of the ice that had settled within him. "Do you plan to stay long?" she asked as they sipped tea together. "Long enough to get things right," Yemi said, a determined glint in his eye. "I won't leave until I reclaim what's mine." Amara nodded, understanding without needing to hear much. "You've always been a fighter, Yemi. One thing they can't take from you is your spirit." Yemi chuckled softly. "Let them try. My fight is just beginning." As he prepared to sleep, he thought of a plan. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he had a card to play, a story to reveal, and he intended to use it well. The next morning, Yemi walked through the village, the cool breeze refreshing his thoughts. Word had spread quickly that he was back. Heads turned as he passed, whispers trailing behind him. Some pitied him, others were simply curious. He entered the local cafe and greeted the owner, who nodded back. "Is it true?" the man dared to ask after a pause. "Depends on what you've heard," Yemi answered with the hint of a smile. He overheard a group of elders discussing in the corner. "He's come back to claim his father's land," one said. "Can you blame him?" said another. "It was his birthright." Yemi felt the words settle over him like a cloak. He had been kicked out for being broke, but he was far from defeated, and it was time to prove everyone wrong. That evening, Yemi returned to his family's compound. He called for a family meeting. His brothers, their wives, and even their father gathered around. Skeptical faces turned towards him. He pulled out a folder from his bag and placed it on the table as he began to speak, his voice low and steady. "I've been in touch with a lawyer," he revealed, seeing their eyes widen, "and I have proof of what truly belongs to me." The air crackled with tension. Would his family rally against him, or would this bring them to their senses? Yemi felt the weight of the moment, holding everything in the balance. He paused as he looked around the room, leaving them hanging on his next word. "I have the deed." The room was charged. Kehinde glanced nervously at Taiwo, both brothers clearly taken aback by Yemi's bold declaration. The air seemed to thicken as Yemi held their gaze, letting the implication of his words sink in. "What do you mean by that?" Kehinde finally spoke, his voice a mix of anger and fear. Yemi leaned back in his chair, feigning nonchalance but feeling the thump of his heart. "I mean every word. I have the deed to the land, proof that it was never yours to sell." Taiwo shook his head in disbelief. "You brought a lawyer into this? Your own family?" Yemi's smile was humorless. "Like you said, I've always been the dreamer, but even dreamers have limits." The murmur of disbelief filled the room as Yemi laid out the documents. Their father, usually a pillar of unyielding authority, sat back silently, the weariness visible in his eyes. "This is madness," Kehinde exclaimed. The wives huddled at the corner, whispering among themselves, eyeing Yemi as a stranger. Before anyone could say more, the old wooden door creaked open and Amara stepped inside. Her presence was like a soft breeze brushing through the storm of tension. She acknowledged Yemi with a nod, then turned to the rest. Amara's words settled awkwardly over the room. The brothers exchanged looks, displeased by her interruption but unable to muster a rebuttal. "It's easy to point fingers, accuse one another, but remember where the true strength of a family lies," Amara continued. Yemi felt a twist of shame creep up his spine. He hadn't expected an outsider to step in, to hold a mirror up to the chaos he'd set in motion. "This is about justice," Kehinde countered, his voice faltering slightly. "And what is justice without love?" Amara asked, looking at each person in turn. "Without reconciliation?" Silence. The word reconciliation weighed heavily in the air. Yemi shifted uneasily. He hadn't considered reconciliation. He'd fixated on the revenge, the sweet payoff of claiming his birthright before their eyes. "What about the wrongs they did to me?" Yemi heard himself say, his voice laced with anger and sorrow. Amara met his gaze. "What about the wrongs we can't undo, or the healing we're avoiding?" Her words pierced deeper than he anticipated. Yemi felt the veneer of his resolve start to crack. Outside, a sudden breeze rustled the palm leaves, their whispers distant yet insistent. Yemi looked down, the documents heavy in his hands, now feeling lighter, almost irrelevant. "What do you propose, then?" Taiwo challenged, skepticism lining his words. Amara looked at him steadily. "Start fresh, before more is lost than just land. You forget relationships are more valuable than all else." The siblings exchanged glances, the shift in their collective resolve palpable. "If we're going to fight," she continued softly, "let it be the fight to heal." The quiet filled with unseen tensions from Yemi, emotions tangled up in years of anger and betrayal. He had come here to claim what was his, yet Amara's words planted a seed he hadn't expected to grow. "Yemi, what do you want?" His father finally spoke, breaking his long-held silence. Yemi considered the question. What did he truly want? To prove his worth? To claim lands and titles? Or to find peace in a fractured image of family that was always just out of reach? "I want—" But his voice trailed off, as if uncertain of the desires he clung to for vindication. In the corner, Taiwo rubbed his temples, whispering something to Kehinde. They both gnawed on the truth they'd sold pieces of their brother's legacy. Let us work something out, Hindi finally conceded, his voice hesitant, burdened with regret. Yemi's heart wavered. It felt like a bandage, quickly applied, yet feeble. Amara is right, he admitted, his voice shaky, yet resolute. This is more than just land, more than revenge. What is left for us if we lose each other too? Amara gave him a small, encouraging smile. As Yemi looked out into the darkening sky, something inside him unraveled, yet it wasn't a feeling of losing, but rather of releasing. Let us pray, Amara suggested, gathering everyone's eyes. Resistant at first, Yemi hesitated. But moment by moment, the resolution within him found an unlikely ally in humility. Yes, let us, Yemi conceded, surprising himself and others. The words felt strange on his tongue, foreign yet strangely familiar. The family bowed their heads, the quiet rustle of the room falling into stillness. Yemi hadn't prayed in years, yet as Amara led them, he felt the weight of every unspoken grievance lift, washed by silent tears. Lord, guide us in our brokenness. Amara's voice filled the room, each prayerful word sowing seeds of peace and hope. Yemi's eyes stung, his walls crumbled. It wasn't a pristine resolution, nor was it an end to all hardships, but the beginning of a new chapter. As they rose from prayer, the fragility of their truth hung between them despite its newborn strength. Nothing substantial had changed, yet everything felt inexplicably lighter. Yemi looked at his brothers, the narrative of enemies shifting back into family, flawed yet familiar. I will stay and help, he told them softly, a testament to newfound resolution. It wasn't his hands that needed possession, but his heart that needed connection. Turning to Amara, Yemi whispered his thankfulness. She merely nodded, knowing true courage was in surrender, not conquest. God uses the cracks to let the light in, Yemi, Amara remarked, her smile soft with wisdom. As he left the compound with Amara, a quiet peace settled over him. He came seeking revenge, but found something far richer: the journey to heal. On the way back to Amara's house, Yemi carried within him not the bitter taste of victory, but the sweet embrace of forgiveness. His path wasn't perfect, and scars of the past didn't vanish. Yet in those marks, he found traces of grace. A certainty lingered in him. The mess of the past couldn't be wiped clean, but perhaps it could be a foundation for something new. Something God had begun to build when all Yemi did was plant revenge. As Yemi paused at the threshold of Amara's home, he gazed up at the heavens above. The moon cast its pale glow on the land, vast and unclaimed, a reminder of the sacrifices and love that reshaped his heart. The village would hear of their story, recall it through whispered tales, recount moments of blunders and battles. But in the end, it was a story of redemption that lingered longer, carving silent hymns in the soil they all once claimed. And so Yemi let go of his iron grip on false victories, only to be embraced by the soft, persistent call of the one who promised something far greater: God's peace, resting like a faithful glow in the heart's deepest recesses. The journey ahead was imperfect, but God's intervention had written a different story, one not of revenge, but of a budding faith and forgiveness, the most unexpected of healings.
Thank you so much for listening to this intriguing story. I hope it touched you or taught you something. For more stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the page. And guys, if you'd like to see a part 2, or you have thoughts on what happened, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.